The first video of this channel was about half of my 2025 summer with bees, and I mentioned how I would talk about my other half of the summer. So, without further ado, here is what I did. I was able to work at the Great Sand Dunes National Park periodically throughout the summer and was there to help a coworker study the Great Sand Dunes tiger beetle. This particular tiger beetle is endemic to the Great Sand Dunes and is found nowhere else. The research is really limited, so it was an amazing experience being able to see and handle these beetles in the wild. The other species we were interested in was another tiger beetle called the big sand tiger beetle, but those are more prolific and are not only seen at the Great Sand Dunes. So here's a side-by-side comparison to show the difference between the size and the color of these beetles. Throughout the summer, I went 3 different times. The first session was at the end of May, the second was in the middle of June, and the last was early August. The amount of time we spent there depended on how fast we got through the sites. There were sites all throughout the national park, as we were tasked in finding out where this beetle was. We had over 30 sites, and we would get through 4 to 6 sites a day. At a site, we would set up a plot of 35 by 35 meters with meter tapes, where we would place a flag at the 35 meter mark and they would be facing the cardinal directions. We would then observe the whole plot for 30 minutes, counting the insects of interest. We were particularly looking for crickets, grasshoppers, beetles, ants or velvet ants, an endemic circus beetle, and the 2 tiger beetle species. Here are some fun things that we saw along the way. When we found a tiger beetle, we would grab our insect nets and chase after them to catch them. It was difficult at first, but I definitely got the hang of it the more I did it. They are super fast running on the ground, and they can fly away to different areas where you can't see them anymore. It is certainly a visual having 2 people waving around butterfly nets in the sand. It was super fun though, and we would then place them in tubes for later analysis. Then we would do a vegetation survey of the dominant vegetation and collect soil samples. This was done in the first session only, which is why it took the longest. We had a vehicle for transportation between sites, but if the sites were close together, we would walk. We had an occasion where our rental vehicle got stuck in the sand, and we had to wait for at least an hour until help arrived. Throughout the months, we would observe how the dunes changed, what plants were present, and how the number of insects fluctuated. Most of our time was not in the actual dunes, but in the sand sheets surrounding them. However, there was one day where we spent the whole time in the sand, and my coworker deemed it Dune Day. This day was meant for the best weather. We had no access to the car, which meant we would have to carry all of our equipment as we went to 5 different sites, racking up a distance of around 11 miles. Dune Day was always super beautiful and was always a good time clambering up the sides of the dunes. Sand would always pile up in the shoes, and we would always have to clean them out periodically so our feet were comfortable. We would rarely find visitors, and the views were always fantastic. Throughout the time at the dunes, I joked with my coworker that the sand dunes is always windy. And it was both something nice and something very challenging. While out in the hot sun, the constant breeze was welcome, but other times it was super difficult to handle. particularly at night when your tent is flapping and smacking you, and then the sand is also smacking you in the face. But I suppose you could say it is the charm of the place. Throughout the days, there were sights and sounds that were incredibly memorable. The Sangre de Cristo Mountains were always present along with the dunes, so whenever we were tired, we could just look up and see the incredible landscape around us. During Dune Day, I found out what the singing sands were, and it is a feeling that hums and vibrates in your body as the sand moves beneath your feet. The wildlife was incredible, where we saw elk, bison, a sulfugid, and horny toads. This whole experience has made me fall in love with the desert more and more, and I am forever grateful to my coworker for giving me a chance to help out with their study. So, in thanks, I will be painting a Great Sand Dunes tiger beetle in commemoration of the field season. However, I'm going to show some other images and videos first to show what else I was able to see during my time this summer. Now, finally, onto the painting. I'm using gouache this time instead of acrylics, as I wanted more of a watercolor look. I am starting off with a sketch where I am using a reference to make sure the anatomy is correct. I then erased the lines before starting with the background. I'm using a little bit of paint and a lot of water to dilute that pigmentation so that way I can get a general sense of what the background is going to look like. From there, I start to add the base colors of the beetle, particularly that green metallic head. I'm building from light to dark and starting off with that green before adding blue. Later I do a yellow wash and then add some red highlights to really show off that green metallic look. The green of the head and thorax then blends into the brown pattern on the abdomen. I got the coloration a little bit wrong, so I changed it to be not as bright. I then made the light parts of the elytra not so starkly white and made it a bit more muddled to fit into the background. The bottom part of the abdomen is visible, so I made it dark, where I will then add detail of white hairs onto it later. The background then needed touching up, so I began to add more detail and color variation. To make the beetle fit more into the environment, I added a shadow below to create the illusion of depth. I also added a grass blade with a shadow to make the same effect. Using my paintbrush, I created sand grain effects by tapping the brush. The inking came next, where I focused on the eye before moving onto the other parts of the body. After lining the body, I used a white acrylic marker to add the hairs that cover the sides of the beetle. As a final touch, I used the metallic watercolor set to add a sheen to the Beetle. It does look quite sparkly in real life, so I wanted to emulate that, using a gold color. After a couple of touch-ups, I was done. I am very happy with this painting, as this Beetle is super fun to draw, and I think it fits well into that sandy background. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. This summer was an experience I will never forget, and the Great Sand Dunes National Park is truly an incredible place to be.